Yo, 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 welcome back to the Further Your Lifestyle podcast, conversations on lifestyle, passions, and hustles. My name's Chris Furlong. I am your host, and I'm super excited to be back here having the conversation with you. Now, today, I've got another guest that I'm super excited to introduce you to, and that is Rae Leach. Now, I met Rae actually via the Fitletic Ambassador Community Program, where we're both runners, and we both actually are ambassadors for Fitletic. And what really stood out to me was that she was creating these insightful and very valuable and informative, TikToks and shorts and reels via her socials of just healthy meals and healthy foods that we can create to have a balanced lifestyle. And basically, that's what she does for a living. She's a dietitian and she helps people find the confidence in food and helping them fuel for their life. In this episode, that's essentially what we talk about. We talk about the power of nutrition. We also talk about how it enables us to fuel our lives and how even though we all do different weird and wonderful things, that food and a diet or a healthy nutrition intake can actually help us have a better day or a better life. We also touch on how maybe what we thought about eating or food might not actually be what we thought. And we go through some of the different myths or misconceptions of food and diets and things like that, but also how you can make a change today or how you can actually make progress in furthering your life in the realms of food, nutrition, and diets. And that maybe it doesn't actually need to be as hard as we thought. This area is definitely out of my area of understanding and expertise, and it's a great conversation to have with Rae because I learned so much, but also it meant that I had to think about it in a different perspective. And I think food is something so important that we need to understand because we're putting it into our bodies every day, and we will be for the entirety of our lives. So it's a good conversation to be having with ourselves, and that's what I really tried to tap into with Rae, to really understand what are the things that we should be knowing or asking ourselves or educating ourselves with to ensure that we can get the best bang for buck when it comes to food and a balanced lifestyle. So let's dive into it. Welcome, Rae, to the Further Your Lifestyle podcast. How you doing this evening?
I'm good. So glad to be here.
Well, thank you so much. How are you? And it's quite funny because we only met, it's must be only the last probably 60 days in terms of coming together in a circle. And that's from Fitletic, in the running community. And after seeing the stuff that you do with your, talking about your diets or talking about the little TikTok recipes that you've been doing, that's what kind of sparks my interest. I'm like, oh, you make these things look so easy and so simple. And I know we're going to touch on a whole bunch of different things today, but how are you? Who are you? And what are you all about?
Well, I'm doing well. I had a full day of work today and now just on the podcast. And it's nice to talk to people in the future. So yeah. It's been really cool to connect with a lot of people over social media, especially during this time when we've all been a little bit more isolated the past couple of years. But yeah, I'm a registered dietitian. My day job is in a hospital. I work with patients in the hospital to help make sure their diets are good, and even the ones who are on the ventilator, we do the tube feeds and stuff like that. So we do a lot of diet education. But yeah, my background is in sports and athletics. My first job as a dietitian was at University Tennessee, working with the sports teams, and I ran track and cross country in college. So that's kind of where I fit in with the running community. But I forget what else you asked, but yeah, I guess we kind of are here just to chat about food today.
That's
which
it.
I love, so.
That's it. And, we'll chat about a bit about you and understand what your background is. And maybe we'll touch on the running first, but running, it's funny. It's one of those conversations where people either they hear it and they're like, oh, zone out, and it's probably the same with diets as well. They hear it and think, oh, it's I don't want to talk about this, but I know for everyone running is a little different. And you did mention you've got a background in a bit of running. You did a bit of college running, I believe. And if I'm correct, you actually won some different races that you did and things like that. So, where did that come from? Was it, were your parents runners or did you just have an interest in running? How did that kind of come to?
Oh, that's a good story. Yeah. I played soccer growing up.
Oh, okay.
I think third grade, I started playing soccer. So I was always kind of the midfielder who did a lot of the running on the outside. So I guess that kind of just lent to being conditioned, well conditioned. And then I guess I was a freshman in high school. Me and my dad decided to do a 5K race. And I really wasn't sure I could run that far. It's 3 miles. I thought, can we do it?
Yeah.
So we did it. And I really enjoyed it, and kind of just took that on as a hobby on the weekends. Me and dad would do
Oh, that's lovely.
races. Yeah. And then my senior year of high school, my school decided to form a cross country team. So somehow they asked me if I wanted to be involved. And around the same time, I toured a school for college where,
Okay.
I had an academic scholarship, so they kind of would try to butter you up and like make it like give you more things that you would like to do, so you
Yeah.
pick their school. So they let me meet the track coach because I said I enjoyed running like as a hobby. And they basically said, come on, if you'll just run your senior year, like you can come run for us, which is unheard of. So it's
Wow.
just kind of one of those miracle things that happens in life. But yeah, so I ran senior year, went to college, and ran cross country and track, and it was such a great character building experience. I think sports really is that. It kind of shows you, that you can handle the rest of life. If you can get the morning run done, you've got everything else in the bag. So
That's it. Win the morning and win the day. But yeah, I
yes.
love how you said there. I mean, it is running is kind of like, I guess, and I like to use it as like a metaphor for life, especially if you're running a marathon, because life is a marathon. It's not a sprint, right? And you have to
Mhm.
learn to just take your time and get into it and get comfortable. And it's the same with running. I mean, obviously, track is probably a bit more speed than time on feet, but it's a process, right? And you have to go through those, I guess, highs and lows in order to get to where you want to be. But I must say, I've actually never ran track before. Like,
Really?
I always started running just just around out the back or around the local area, and that was for weight loss. But to run track, you hear about a lot of people that that's where they did it at school, like yourself, or university, and it became quite a regular activity or a sport. But I've actually kind of always ran like in this isolated sense. I run with my girlfriend now, and if you're running at a race and stuff, but it's actually a weird thing. I can't even comprehend it because it's a whole different mentality. But I can understand how running with other people, like on a track, whether it's training, it would actually be quite competitive. Like it would actually change the landscape of how you're, I guess, thinking while running. Whereas when you're running by yourself, you kind of just you're against yourself. But when you've got other people
Mhm.
around, it's kind of like subconsciously, or even if you're not trying to prove it, I could feel that you're trying to be competitive in some sense.
It is, and even in workouts, I remember one of my
Yeah.
coaches had taught us how to kind of line up in a formation with each other, and one person would kind of lead and set the pace, and that was all just completely new to me. I was used to just running. I thought, how are we not going to hit each other? But no, it's really fun, and it is a really different experience than running out in the woods or something. But both are nice. I think some of
100%.
both is.
I agree. I would love
Should,
to.
yeah, you should try out a track sometime.
Yeah,
I
I
think
would
you'd
love to
like it.
do a we have one locally where it's kind of like it's called the Coburg 24, and it's basically they do a 24-hour challenge of how many laps you can run in 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
I would love to do that because I feel like it would be a fun challenge, like a grind. I think they've got a 24-hour, they've got a 12-hour, different levels. But I think it'd be one of those things where you can do it as a grind, and they do it to raise money and things like that. But I think that would be a fun way to do it to make it different. Yeah, anyway, that people are probably thinking this guy's a weirdo. Why would you
That
do
was
that
my fault. A tangent. Yeah.
no. But okay, so you've done the running, and I'm sure we'll probably bring that up a bit more as we go through. But in terms of that, so yeah, you studied at university, and you're a dietitian now. So how did you actually get into that space? Because it's not people growing up was it kind of like when I grew up I want to be a dietitian,
No.
exactly. So like how did that come to being, I guess?
Yeah, when I was in college, I thought I was looking into physical therapy. I think y'all might call it physiotherapy,
Yep, yep.
kind of that area. And I was in college, started getting interested in like food more because, like we talked about before, it's just so integral to your running and how you feel out there. You really have to kind of dial that in for performance. So
Yeah,
I didn't realize dietitian was a job. Like I didn't really
yeah. Okay.
realize you could work with healthy eating as a job. So I had a nutrition class for exercise science, which was my major. And yeah, I kind of got introduced to that career path and thought, I think that's for me.
Okay.
So Yeah, I've been really happy with it. I thought I was going to work with athletic teams, sports teams was the goal, but ended up taking another turn. Well, we had talked about this too, like as far as having more time for myself, and for my own healthy lifestyle, because that job was a little bit more demanding in terms of hours. So yeah, and I love the hospital patients too. So um, you never know where you might end up, but
That,
yeah.
that's it. I love that. And we can dive into that a bit. And yeah, because, you said you had this expectation. Well, one, you didn't even have this expectation. That's what you were going to do. Then you've gone and done it. And then, you were thinking you were going to end up working with athletes and things like that, which naturally would make sense because, having a bit of an athlete background and things like that, it makes sense. But then you said, you pivoted and you mentioned, you had to change that because of a work-life balance perspective. But now you're actually in a space where actually you realize you're actually really enjoying it, and it's actually even better than you probably expected. So let's quickly touch on that, because I think we are going to be talking about a lot of nutrition and diets and all that, but that comes back to a healthy lifestyle anyway. And I think a big healthy lifestyle aspect or attribute is obviously a work-life balance. So I mean, we don't have to go into super detail, but you pivoting to make that change, I guess I want to just clarify for those that are listening, is like, was that because you were just working too much, it wasn't what you wanted, or was it because an opportunity came and then you kind of weighed off, the pros and cons, or how did that kind of play out as well?
Yeah, I would say some of both. So my job at Tennessee was a 10-month position to start out with. It was kind of laid out that way. So I kind of needed to start looking at what was my next move going to be. Um, and yeah, around that time, I guess mental health, I know
Yeah.
in the past few years has been um, kind of more of a thing for a lot of people. And I think just related to everything we've gone through collectively. But
Yeah.
yeah, I really struggling with some anxiety, and I think related to not sleeping enough,
Okay.
probably not eating as well as I could have, and working 12 plus hours a lot of days and kind of being exhausted. We do a lot of physical work in the sports setting, like stocking all of the food and beverages and stuff like that, which sounds kind of funny, like, but it can be pretty tiring. And cross country arms not necessarily built for that kind of labor, but there were things I absolutely loved about that job. And when something has been kind of your vision, it is hard to pivot,
Yeah.
like you said. But I started looking and found a job, and applied, and really didn't think I would get the interview because I didn't have clinical
Okay.
experience as far as working, just
Yep.
volunteer. But when I interviewed with them, I think that's when I really knew I wanted to um, make a change and that it might be good for me because
Okay.
just of what the people were like. I think that's, such an important thing in your work is that the people are a really good fit. Which my previous staff was really nice too, but the lifestyle was the biggest thing. So now I work a defined amount of time,
That's
and
good.
I have that time before and after. And I think because I had the passion for the social media stuff, that's probably the biggest reason why it's a better fit.
Okay.
Because I have time to do that. So
Yeah, no, I thank you for sharing that. And I think it's an important conversation, looking holistically, because I mean, the whole idea of furthering your lifestyle, it shouldn't just be one area. If we're going to be trying to make a change and make our lives better, we should try and see what we can do across all areas, right? Whether it's mental, physical, food and all that jazz, right? Because they all have components to play in helping us achieve that, I guess, at the end of the result, that happiness, right? And even though you were doing a job that you really enjoyed and you were happy, you were in a space where you always envisioned, you were kind of raising those red flags of like, hang on, this isn't it, this isn't, this, I don't have the time to do this, or I don't have time to work on other passions and things. And that can be a hard thing to do, to make the change. So kudos for doing it, because, and I know you said that your time there was only about 10 months or whatnot, and that was
mhm.
how long it was expected to be. But still, to make those kind of changes, it's not easy to do. I know some people, well, for me, I'm a routine junkie, so I like to kind of
Mhm.
stick to the same. And then to kind of like uproot and change, it is a bit of a scary thing to do. So kudos for doing that. And I guess you also alluded to that. Yeah, you are doing some of the passion work around creating some of the small videos and TikToks and shorts around I guess, the little food recipes and ingredients and
Hmm.
healthy food ideas. So let's touch on that quickly, and then we'll get into a bit more about what you're actually doing on a day-to-day basis.
Sure,
And
stuff that'll help people more, but
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I think social media is so powerful. Um, in my time just creating the short videos on Instagram, I think my total reach is over 750,000.
wow.
People have seen my videos, which is, I mean, it sounds like a number, but it's really amazing because as a dietitian, that's kind of my whole mission is to help people understand how to eat well and kind of relieve some of that confusion around healthy eating. And the inspiring and motivating part too, helping people want to do that for themselves.
Yeah, actually, that's when I think about it, because, and I'm going to ask you in a second to explain what does a dietitian actually do. So for those that they
Yeah.
don't know, but with your videos, you are making these, wonderful little recipes, or little meals that you can do, or snacks and stuff. And from someone coming in, with no context, they're going to like, oh, this looks quick and easy. This is going to be great. So they're going to do it, but they might not necessarily know the actual benefits that it's going to be bringing. And I guess that's a double win for you, because you're helping them, do things quickly. You're helping them eat right. And you're helping them change their life. So they don't actually really realize the value you're bringing. So, it's kind of a little bundle of joy wrapped up there. But what does a dietitian actually do? So for those that don't know, what's a day in a life look like, or what is it if you had to kind of put it on paper? So just so people understand what it is you
Yeah.
do.
I believe we're defined like the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics here in the US and North America is kind of our governing body. So their definition is that we're the food and nutrition experts. There's definitely a lot more to it in practice, but kind of we study the science of food and nutrition, and we're the only professionals that really do study that at
Yeah,
length
okay.
in college. And then we complete supervised practice and take board exams. So we're really well conditioned to be able to help people with any kind of needs surrounding food. So whether that is, the critically ill,
Okay.
people in the hospital, or people with eating disorders, people with high energy needs like athletes, anybody who has any kind of, and even just normal people who
Yeah.
have nutrition concerns. We kind of have concentrated all that knowledge. So we're kind of a good resource for anyone to come to for those sort of things. So that's the basis of it. Um, and
And
and we work in all kinds of different roles. So
yeah, it makes sense. And I think it's probably one of those things where, as I said at the start, you mentioned diets, you mentioned nutrition, and some people are going to be very curious about it, depending on your background, if you like science and biology and all that jazz. Whereas, other people think, oh, someone's going to tell me I can't have this anymore. And, and look, I know, I understand it's a bit of both, right? And, and that's what we're probably going to dive into more in our conversation today. And, you know, the way I love how, you've kind of shared, I guess, your bio and things in terms of, your own website and what you have on your socials, it's about how the power of nutrition and the right kind of diet can help us fuel our lifestyles, right? And I think that's really the key headline that I love there, is like, because all of us, some of us are, whether we're athletes, whether we're corporate workers, whether we're just doing a labor intensive job or whatever it is, there's a right kind of diet for everyone that will enable us to have the best out of our lifestyle, right? And I guess fueling being that key one. And I know people think, oh, you only need to eat right if you are doing that high performance stuff, such as athletes. But I would think that that's probably wrong, right? And if we actually have whether it's a better diet or nutrition intake, we can actually probably get the most out of our days. It's kind of like that whole saying is like, eat the frog first, kind of in meaning, eat that biggest thing that you have to do in the morning, or defeat that biggest challenge you have in the morning, because that's when you're awake, that's when you're fresh, and then your rest of the day will be a bit easier. So if you've got, 5 things to do today, do the biggest task, get it done, and then the rest, you can smash out easy enough. I guess it's probably the same sense of fueling with food. So with
mhm.
that in mind, is there kind of things that we should be asking ourselves, when it comes into nutrition and diets of, how do we actually bring this into play? Is there questions we should be asking ourselves, or should we just be Googling up on the internet and finding something to, what we think is going to be right. I mean, how do we even start with that?
Absolutely. Well, I think that, kind of hit the nail on the head that whatever it is that you like to do in your life, fueling your lifestyle, like nutrition and eating well, can help you do that better, and help you enjoy your life more. I think that is why it's important, because there's a direct benefit that you can feel. And whatever your passion is, if you want to be able to do that to the best of your ability, lifestyle and healthy eating is one of those parts of your lifestyle. Just makes it easier. So I think, what wanted to know what we should be asking ourselves, as far as like, our eating kind of.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like, or maybe it's an example of how this can play out. Because, me being a runner, not everyone's going to be running, and, I'm going to be eating differently. But if, you're one of the, I guess, the normal people, probably that most people would fall under, let's say the 9-to-5 worker, right? What is something we should be considering about how can we even look at food and think, oh, if I had changed this, it might mean that I can be more productive today. Because a lot of the people, we just see what we see on the internet, we just see what we see on TV, or we just eat what we're getting put in front of us, or, what we've always done as a family, or traditions and routine. Whereas, it's kind of like how people say that, oh, I've got to have my coffee in the morning in order to do something. That probably comes down to more mental than it does actually, with the actual food, the coffee intake, because if you didn't have the coffee, you could probably still get everything done. But it's that mental thing that once I have the coffee, I'm going to be able to do more now. So it's like,
Exactly.
So how can we bring that into play of like, well, how do I even make that kind of change? Because, where would people wouldn't even know where to start, unless obviously they could come see a, dietitian or something like that. But like it's a kind of a weird thing, because most of us, especially, myself, a 30-year-old, been eating my entire life, but then, to then all of a sudden change that, or think about, well, how do I change that? Like, what should I even be considering?
Right. I think, you're right that not everyone will get to go meet with a dietitian. I know I didn't. And I'm a dietitian, but it wasn't, I didn't get to have that. So kind of looking at what I would want people to know, who aren't able to have that. I think starting with your why, like your motivation, is probably the most important thing, because if you don't know why you're doing something, it's easy for any kind of habit to fall off. And I think that, I think energy is having enough energy to do the whatever, say your 9 to 5, working on cars or whatever it might be. Feeling better and feeling happier is maybe a good benefit that you might be able to reap from eating well. I think having more energy to be there for, your loved ones, whoever you might take care of or live with, to be a better friend or roommate, or I think whatever, for a lot of people, their why is going to be related to physical appearance. We see that a lot. And that's valid as well. Of course, within healthy, constraints, not like we don't want to starve ourselves, but whatever is a motivating why, I think that's the first most important thing to kind of isolate. And then kind of choosing small goals that will help you towards that. It might be eating breakfast, for a lot of people, that's going to give you an energy boost, maybe similar to coffee. And that could become something that you look forward to. So I think making enjoyable habits too. I could go on and on about that one, but I think baby steps is definitely what we preach. So
okay, and because I guess, it's not like one glove fits all either. Like, what I eat, if I gave the same diet to someone else, it's not necessarily going to replicate the same result. Because we all have different body types and, how our metabolisms work and things like that. And, if I'm a runner and they're not, I'm going to be burning things differently or more, or require a different intake. And, I don't want to say all that to make it complicated and to scare people and say, you can't be doing this. but obviously that's a factor to play. So I think that's really good about asking your why, because I think that's like with anything in life, yet we overcomplicate it because, it's when I went through a journey of weight loss, this is about 7 years ago, and once I realized, got to the point that I had to change, what I was eating and how I intake food and things like that, I started to change my perception of, okay, I'm not having this because because it tastes good. I'm having this because it's changing something of me. It's going to make me feel better. It's going to make me look good. It's going to make me, bring all those things to life that I actually want, which brings me back to a why. Whereas, when people are all of a sudden they're saying, you have to have this now, and, this is why, but if they don't accept that why, or if they don't want that why, then it's going to be hard to make that transition. And I think you said it really well in terms of those small different steps, trying to find those little things. And especially if we've been eating a certain way for 30 years and then someone tells you, no, you can't do
Yeah.
this, or you have to change, that's quite hard. But I also loved your talk about the breakfast, because I know so many people, they actually don't have breakfast, which I find quite funny, because like for me, breakfast is like one of my favorite things. I mean, I love food in general, but breakfast is something that I'm always excited for, more so probably because, if I go for a run, I love to be able to have that afterwards and enjoy it.
Yeah.
But it's weird how everyone is different that way. But there's no, I guess there's no, coming back to that point, there's no one glove that fits all. So I guess if someone did need to try and find out, what should I be eating? Do they need to come see you, or do they need to be kind of asking themselves, am I feeling tired? Because I guess there would be kind of like pointers or signals that would kind of tell us that, oh, maybe you do need to go see someone and get some help, because, you could cut out coffee and nothing changes. You could have 10 more coffees and you're still tired, right? Like, not saying it's all about coffee, but that's what people naturally would do, right? If you're feeling tired, oh, I'll have
Right.
a quick sugar hit, or I'll have some coffee and get back into it. But then, you're going to have that 3 o'clock itis where you just slump down because that sugar high is now dropped. And sugar's not the answer to our problems. But would that be the right approach? Is like, kind of figuring out what you need, or when you're feeling low, and then playing it back to someone like yourself as a dietitian, or seeing a doctor, or how would that play out?
Yeah, I would say there's so many different ways to go about making changes in your eating. And certainly, your dietitians would love
Yeah.
to see you. And if you can find one that you feel would be a good fit, and you have the financial means to do that, then there's definitely nothing. I mean, that would be great. But that's not always everyone's
Yeah.
situation. I know it wasn't mine. So I would say, there's a lot of places that you can learn good information on the internet. There's a lot of places where you can learn not so good information. And, you know, as far as how to recommend where to find that, I would say a great place to start is honestly following some dietitians on social media.
Yeah.
Um,
AKA yourself.
not trying to really plug myself, but even if you look at research studies, it can be hard for the average person to kind of go on Google Scholar and really figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And then if you just Google something, then you're going to get everybody's opinion in the whole world. So
Yeah.
I think it's great to have friends or a dietitian or a doctor who are knowledgeable that can help you out. But I think probably the most important thing for people to know is that what they think as of healthy foods and healthy eating, if they just take a step in that direction, a lot of times that's going to be good. Like if you think about, vegetables, we all know vegetables are healthy. So if you can find one you like
Yeah.
and add that in one more time, it really is those little things. And I think there's some parts of nutrition that can get tricky and confusing, and that's kind of what we're here to help clear up. For example, carbs, fats, all the kind of noise surrounding whether we should or shouldn't eat them. And from my perspective, some of everything is good. So it's definitely good to have carbs in your diet. It's definitely good to have fat. A balanced diet is really what we're aiming for. So you know, there's a tool that our government in the US, I think most countries have one, but they put out, it's called the My Plate, and
Okay.
it's got all your food groups. So it's
Yep.
essentially the new food pyramid. And we teach that a lot to our diabetic clients at the hospital. But, we want to aim for building a balanced plate that has whole grains. So any kind of carbohydrate food that also contains fiber is a great choice. And then protein. So
Yep.
your lean meats, your fish, legumes, beans, soy, all those kinds of foods. And then fruits, vegetables, maybe some dairy if you do dairy,
Yep.
kind of that well-rounded, what you would think of, is what we're kind of aiming for. And
Yeah.
then, you can always take things a step further and make it just a little bit better. But once you get into that kind of realm of, good balanced meals, steadily throughout the day. Some people might need a snack, especially depending on your exercise levels. But I think adding is great too, focusing on what you do want to eat rather than what you're cutting out,
Yeah.
which
Okay.
certainly you can focus on. But if you find you're getting maybe frustrated or feeling like you're not going to be able to make a change, I think focusing on the fun, positive parts, finding foods that you
Yeah.
like to eat that are also healthy.
That's
So that's
yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
little overview.
Yeah. That's really good, right? And there's a lot of perspective there, because I think the two things that I really took away from that is like, well, I can use myself as an example. I've been eating for 30 years anyway. So it's kind of like, if you're going to be eating for another 30 years again. So those small changes over a long period of time is, going to be better than trying to go cold turkey and just cut out everything and start from bottom. Which I know, some people do that, and that is, good on them. And it's quite hard to do,
Mhm,
of course, but
mhm,
and that would be quite drastic in terms of your body would react quite differently. But having those small changes, it's kind of like building a habit or a routine change in our lives, right? If you want to start running, you have to do a little bit of this every day. Or if
mhm,
you want to grow a business, you need to be putting in a little bit of effort. If you want to journal, you need to do a little bit every day. Or if you're wanting to start reading, I mean, it's the same mentality, and it really does come down to that mental, I guess, aspect of being able to understand, well, like, I'll do one little thing over a long period of time and start to see, I guess, the gains or the momentum or the changes. And once we get that trigger, I think that's when we can start to see, we have that clicking point, and then we can start to snowball it and make a bigger change, or you become more motivated or excited to do it. Because, I still find that there's such this, people are looking at, oh, food diet, got to change. And they look at it from a bad element, right? But, I guess from your perspective, it's like, well, once you have that fresh and positive, I guess, perspective of food and what it can do for you, and you're seeing those results, you'll be thinking, why didn't I do this earlier?
mhm,
Right?
mhm. Especially when it becomes enjoyable,
Yeah.
Um, yeah, for me, it's definitely a positive in my life. And I think probably one important thing to mention is like balance, right? So you can always have a place in your life for ice cream or whatever it is. Just because you decide to eat a little bit healthier,
Yeah.
to better yourself doesn't mean that you aren't going to also still enjoy those things on occasion. So I think that's important to mention
100%.
as well.
I think I'll make sure that that's a big call out in this episode. No, I'm just joking. It's all right, guys. You
Thanks.
don't have to cut out ice cream. But I
Right.
think that's, and maybe that's a good segue to some of the myths versus reality, right? Because, and one thing that I wanted to chat to you about is actually, yeah, trying to help us clarify some of those misconceptions. And, that ice cream one is a good one, which you kind of mentioned that, there is this, I guess, false perception that, oh, if I'm going on a diet or if I have to do this, it means I can't have the fun foods, or I can't, have the ice creams or chocolate, or, or it might be more carby foods. And, I hear so many people saying, oh, I'm on a, high fat, low carb, or high carb, low fat, or then you've got, paleo diets, you've got non this, you've got vegan, you've got so many different diets that it's overwhelming. It really is overwhelming. And which is why I could understand why people coming in here, yeah, wanting to make a change with their food or their diet or, healthy lifestyle, but they'll be thinking, where do I start? What do I do? So I guess when it comes back to some of those conversations, what are some of the myths versus reality, or some of those misconceptions that we can kind of clarify for the audience?
Right. I think you mentioned, some of the popular diets, and their names change throughout the years, but there's only so many ways we can really put food into different boxes.
Yeah.
And I do like to mention that if somebody enjoys a way of eating and it makes them feel happy and really enriches their life, I definitely wouldn't, take that away
Okay.
unless it was endangering in their health in some way. But I think one of the biggest myths that we talked about is that your diet doesn't necessarily need to have a name.
Yeah.
And it might be better and easier for you if it doesn't. So healthy eating
True.
doesn't have to be intermittent fasting or keto or paleo. And I think all of those diets take elements of what we consider just a healthy diet, and they're kind of on one edge or the other. And there's a lot of varying research, I would say, on all those diets and whether they're healthy long term, or there's a lot of things we don't really know, and maybe they can be good, but I don't think they're necessary,
Yeah.
and and I think having all the different names can make things a little bit more confusing. So if you're someone who is confused by that, then I would say, you don't really need to worry about all of that.
Yeah.
Just your standard healthy diet is perfectly good enough. So
Yeah. Okay. And I guess maybe that's another good kind of question, putting you on the spot here. And you've already kind of talked about the plate diet, and what we should be having on our full plate for the day. But I guess healthy, I guess people talk about healthy, or even and of course you have all the different products and marketing. They're saying this has a 5-star health rating, or this is healthy, or this is doesn't have that, or it's 99% fat free, and all this
mhm,
lingo. Yet anyone coming in, all they're going to see in the marketing is, oh, this is healthy, so it must be good, right? Whereas that could be just a marketing ploy, or in its terms and
right.
conditions and things like that. So once again, it's kind of like, well, then how do we help define what is healthy if you're walking down a shop aisle? And I know it's a very, very broad question, because there's no
That's okay.
but I guess that would be something that I think people would probably need clarifying, is because what most people think healthy is vegetables and fruits, right? It's like, oh, it's healthy food. But there would be so many other healthy things, as you kind of alluded to before, that we probably don't even realize, that small change,
Mhm,
or adding a little bit of this, it's actually not bad for you. Or as you said, around carbs and fat, they're all important to our diets, but it's probably not having excess. So how do we bring in that healthy element, without trying to get too scientific, I guess, because most people hear scientific and they think, oh, it's too much effort, I'll just go back to the shelf and
right.
buy whatever's healthy. Like, that's labeled
Yeah.
healthy.
I mean, there's definitely a lot of confusion in this area, and a lot of it does have to do with marketing. And I think it can be difficult to figure out, what is good for me to eat. And some of it does depend on the person. So say if you have a medical condition like we treat in the hospital, you need to so like if you have high blood pressure, you
Yeah.
might need to have less sodium in your diet. So you might need to look at sodium on the package more than other people. Whereas if you're running and you sweat a lot, you might actually need more sodium.
Yeah.
um, so that kind of goes into what you said earlier about different people kind of personalizing and needing different things out of their diet. But if you're just walking in the grocery store, I think you're automatically going to know the produce section. Okay, most of that is healthy food, right?
Yeah.
And I think there has been kind of a something that went around where people would say, shop the perimeter of the grocery store.
Oh yeah.
um, and I think that can be a helpful tool, but there's also things on the aisles that would be great choices too. So I think probably trying to think of the easiest way to kind of break it down. I think definitely, those main food groups,
Yeah.
looking for foods that are the most nutrient dense, like bang for your buck.
Yeah.
You always want, a good amount of fiber in your food. And that's what fruits and vegetables are
Yeah.
great for. They're packed with fiber. So kind of carrying that over to like your grains as well. One of the, I guess, items that is most prevalent on the aisles of the grocery store is grain type foods, like your
Yeah.
crackers, your chips, your cookies, all that. Oatmeal, the
Yep.
the breakfast cereal aisle. And when you're looking at those types of foods, a lot of the time, it's fine to totally have whatever on occasion or as a smaller part of your diet, but choosing like whole grains or fiber rich carbs is probably what you want to have the most
Yeah. Okay.
predominantly in your diet. So you can easily just kind of look at an ingredient list and see, what is the first ingredient? So ingredients are listed in order of how much of them are in the package.
Yep.
So if the first ingredient is like honey,
Yeah.
then okay, there's probably a lot of sugar in
Yeah.
this item. So it's gonna be more of a treat food.
Yeah.
Whereas like if you're looking at a box of cereal and the first ingredient is like whole grain wheat or whole grain rice, and then the sugars are, so you also can look at
Yeah.
that nutrition facts. And if we like to say like under 5 or 10 grams for a box of cereal is generally like a lower sugar. Like there's so many different
Yeah.
products I could go into. So
But
I don't
I
want to
think
make it confusing, but
it gives some element, right? And I think it starts to tell us that it is a complicated, complex situation because everyone's going to be unique and different. But I think it's
Mhm.
probably that awareness and like being mindful, right? Because some people, I think hearing the conversation that we're having at the moment is key because a lot of us just do because that's what we've always done. Whereas when you're introduced to saying, oh, okay, maybe I should check this, and then actually realize it, because a lot of the time we probably consume things because that's what we've always done. But I mean, a lot of this stuff we're not educated through school, right? Like it's not like
Mhm.
they have a class and say, this is the nutritional facts, this is the things you should be thinking about. I mean, it's kind of like put there in hearsay and very light, but it's kind of like the whole other debate. It's not like they teach how to manage your money in school either, right? They're
Wouldn't
kind
that
of
be
like,
great? Yeah.
yeah, it's like those are the fundamentals of life. It's like money and food, right? Like it's like we live
Mhm.
and breathe with, like, but and I think that's the importance of why I wanted to have these conversations is because coming back to that point, it's not one glove fits all, but we do need to be mindful and be willing to just, I guess, be open to seeing, okay, what are we actually putting in our bodies, and that realization. Because I think if people actually went around and had a look and seeing what they're consuming on a daily basis, they'll start to think, huh, it's not what I thought, or I thought this didn't have this in it, or I thought that had more of that in it. And obviously some things are very, here we call them like cocoa pops and all the sugary cereals and things like that. And
Right.
now that's in the last 5 years, I think people have started to understand we don't want to be giving our kids that too much. Maybe that's for like a special occasion or something like that. And they need to be having a more solid breakfast. And I think that conversation has changed. So I think as a people, we are getting better in being aware of that, but it is still so layered and so kind of hard to build through. And I think the only way that I can come to sense of breaking through that is coming back to that why, because unless you're interested
Mhm.
in making a change or wanting to have something different in your life in this kind of ecosystem around food and diet and healthy living, you have to be willing to do it. Like otherwise it's going to feel like a chore, and you probably won't have the progress or success that you want.
Right. And you might not even know what your progress is if you don't have
Yeah.
something that you're, seeing the outcome. And I think that was great that you brought it back to the why, because like thinking about even just your breakfast cereal, maybe what you're looking for is a breakfast that will keep you fuller longer or keep you from having a mid-morning crash,
Yeah.
help with your energy levels being more stable. And choosing those foods that have more fiber, more protein, and not just like a sugary cereal made with white flour, are going to give you that more sustained energy.
Yeah.
So working on your breakfast, that's what you're going to see. And that comes back to what you're wanting out of it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So just a random question then, because I'm just thinking there could be some people thinking, okay, so why should we be looking for more fiber or protein?
Right, right.
Just as and I think it's one of those things is we say all these things, And some people will be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But for someone that maybe has no context of, I think protein is probably a bit more understanding because, it helps build the strength and muscle, but that's what we naturally lean to. But when we think of fiber, like, what is that actually doing for our bodies? Like, quick little crash course, like how does that play out in our
Yeah.
bodies?
Yeah. So a lot of our kind of energy, keeping our energy steady and keeping from having that crash, has to do with blood sugar.
Yep.
So protein and fiber are and fat as well are things that help stabilize your blood sugar.
Okay.
So if you have like just banana.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be just carbs, maybe a little bit of fiber, but
Yep.
it's mostly carbs and it's sweet, and bananas are great. But if you have it by itself, then you're kind of going to get some quick energy and then you won't really stay full for long.
Okay.
You kind of know that that's small and it doesn't have a lot of sustenance to it. So
Okay.
you're going to get a blood sugar spike and then a drop. But if you have like the banana with whole grain toast and some peanut butter, maybe some other kind of protein like scrambled eggs,
Yep.
then you're going to get your blood sugar going up a little bit and then it's
Yep.
going to stay more stable.
Okay.
And then it'll slowly go back down and then you'll have your next meal. And that's just a great way to live, kind of feeling balanced and calm.
Yeah.
I think all of us want that. So yeah, the fiber and the protein are two great tools to help stabilize your blood sugar.
Yep.
And they also help they slow your gastric emptying. So
Okay.
stuff is going to go through your stomach, kind of digestive tract at a slower rate. So
Okay.
you're going to feel fuller for longer.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love the analogy. Well, it's not an analogy, but I love how you explained it of kind of like, yeah, you get the spike, but then if if you've got the other things complementing it, you kind of ride that wave longer, right? And I think that's, probably one of the biggest things that people, we do. We tend to, we get the spike, we go out, do what we've got to do for work or exercise or whatever, but then, after a while, you just drop, right? And then so the next thing, you grab that sweet or you grab that small little spike, but all you're doing is doing exactly the same thing again. So you're just doing this all day, crashing, burning, and whereas really, if you actually just changed maybe one or two things, you could probably, have one and then ride it longer. And then you have that balance and you're going to feel fitter, fuller and stronger for a longer period of time. And I love that because just taking it all in, it's kind of like helps you think. It's like, well, why wouldn't we be doing this? Like, it just makes so much more sense, right? But it probably comes down to education and knowledge and understanding of what it can do. And I think when people make that click or that understanding of what that can do for you, and then you leverage that, it's going to be life-changing. I love it. That's so good.
And I wish we were taught that at a younger age. You're so right that that's a very important life skill, money and food, and we aren't always taught it. So that's one of the big reasons why it's great to be out here doing things like this, because there's very important skills that a lot of us miss out on.
100%. And I think we've actually probably already answered the next thing I kind of wanted to dive into, and we've probably alluded to it the entire way through the conversation, is like, for someone that actually doesn't have a drive to want to make a change or, to change their diet or their intake, I guess how can we, or what can be something that we can do to help them consider or help us consider in understanding this better or making that change? And, how you explained it just before has, opened my eyes a lot better. And to me, that seems like, well, it's a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you do it? But I guess there's still probably going to be, the people that are thinking, it's all a bit fluffy, or I don't want to do it, or they can't see the benefits in the longer term. So, and I would probably expect that, people coming to see you, there's people coming to see you that have to see you, or, maybe your job's a bit different now, but previously, or people would go see a dietitian because they're getting told to versus because they want to actually make a difference. So, if someone's coming to you because they're being told to, how are you helping them have that mindset change and see it differently of that, how this can actually make their lives better? Because I think that's, where people struggle the most is until they have that click moment and actually see the benefit, they're probably not going to actually be on board for it.
Right. I think that is so key that, that person has to want to make that change, because nobody's going to eat for you for the most
Yeah.
part, and that has to be something that you want. I think there is probably something for everyone as
Yeah.
far as a reason why to do it, and whether they've realized that or not yet,
Yeah.
is another thing. But I think a lot of times people who maybe don't have to worry about their weight from a young age, have always been trim,
Yeah.
maybe aren't super concerned about their eating. And I think probably the biggest thing that would throw a wrench in that and kind of make somebody think about that is at some point in their life, a lot of times people will have kind of their metabolism feels
Yeah.
like it's slowed down, it'll hit them and they have to worry about their weight. But maybe before that happens, if you kind of think about other aspects of nutrition, you might not have to face it that way.
Yeah.
So I think this is really powerful, that kind of every cell in our body is built and rebuilt, whenever we have damage and we have to repair with the food we eat. So
Yeah.
essentially the food we eat is making up what, you know, the substance of our body, like
Yeah.
our muscles, everything. And for women, if you want to have shiny, nice hair, if you want to have strong nails, it's all being built because you eat well.
It's
So
true.
if you don't eat well, I think acne is more common. I think getting sick is more common. Your immune system's not going to be as strong. Building muscle is definitely going to be more difficult. Your brain, thinking, if you're somebody who values, that kind of area
Yeah.
of being smart, that is going to be benefited by good nutrition. And there's a lot of studies to show that. So I think whatever is your favorite thing in life, maybe, give it a think session and think about whether food might be able to help with that. And
Yeah.
it probably can. So
Okay. No, that's a really good answer, right? Because it I mean, it really does. I mean, anything in life comes down to us taking action and wanting and things like that. I know that, but I think it's helping people see the perception and helping them zoom out and actually take that different understanding and look at it. Because unfortunately, yeah, we've kind of been conditioned, or we've been doing something for so long that we just assume that it's right because that's what we've always been told. But
mhm.
you're right, and until we start to get older, not saying we're old or anything, but our body changes, or our body starts to slow down, and you start to realize, oh, I wasn't able to do that as much as easy as I used to, or your body starts to change and adapt, which means what you thought, oh, I've always been skinny, or I've always been lean, or I've always been this, but then you realize it's not the same, and that's probably because everything's catching up. But I think maybe that's a good way to look at it as well. If you feel like things are changing, or you don't have that young teenage energy that you used to have and things like that, that's probably, I guess, things to start making you think of, like, okay, do I need to make a change? Not saying food will solve all your problems either, because
Right.
obviously there's so many other elements at play. But I mean, it's kind of like that whole, yeah, actually this is a good analogy. It's like we tend to spend money on so many different things, yet the stuff that we spend most of our time in, our bed or our pillow or our shoes, we tend to don't spend as much on that until we realize, like, actually, yeah, we're spending 8 hours a day on shoes, or we're spending 8 hours a day in our bed or on a pillow. It's like, wouldn't you want to be spending the most money on those things to enable you to have the best sleep or the best support? And I think it's the same with food, helping you understand, like, wouldn't you want to be understanding the quality or what you're putting in, because that's actually going to be the most thing going into your body over the longest period of time. And I think then once you have that realization, you can start to see, there is probably things I need to change. And I'm not saying that I've got all this figured out for those that are listening as well, but it's always interesting to hear it. And that's why I love having these conversations, is because I get to hear it all first and think, oh wow, what can I change, what can I fix? And that's the beauty of it, is because we don't know what we don't know. And having
Mhm.
someone like yourself to be able to have the conversation with helps us have that fresh perspective, or remove some of the myths or misconceptions. Because a lot of the time it's because we're not aware, so therefore what we think we know is right, it must be working, when there's a whole other world out there, or a whole other perception, or a whole other understanding.
Mhm. And I also was thinking, I tend to like to motivate with the positive. So we're talking about having energy, feeling good, maintaining a healthy weight, performance in sports and all kinds of stuff like
Yeah.
that. But a lot of times, my day job, we're kind of facing the motivation of the negative
Yeah.
things that will come at you if you don't focus on nutrition for
Yeah.
fun reasons, then in comes diabetes or,
Yeah.
a million other kinds of diseases where diet change is kind of necessary.
Yeah.
So I think also, if you're not interested in the positive benefits that we talked about, and there's nothing wrong with that if that didn't spark your
Yeah.
interest, but I would consider preventing disease is a big reason to eat
Yeah.
well, if for no other reason. So I wanted to kind of throw that in there.
Yeah. No,
But I
that's
usually
really
like
good.
to keep it light and positive. So
No, that's good. And I think when we first caught up, we talked about even finding that confidence as well. And I think once you're
mhm.
able to get on top of that, find that routine, you can eat with confidence and know that it's going to help you win the day or win the week or whatever it is that you're leveraging it for. Because I think that plays also well with how we perceive ourselves, whether looking in the mirror or, comparing ourselves to others and things like that. And that's easier said than done. But I think that confidence piece, and helping people find that confidence through food and knowing that if I eat this, this is what it's going to enable me to do. I think that's a huge part to play as well, because once again, we are thrown, marketing from what we see at supermarkets and products. We're thrown with, what we see in socials, the good and the bad, which makes it very confusing because you've got someone like yourself sharing all these tips and tricks, all these healthy recipes that you can make, which you think, oh, wow, that's really, really, really good. But then you've got all these other people, and you've got mukbangs of people consuming food, which is a lot of fun and things like that. And it's not to say that you can't do that, but I think finding that routine and flow that gives you that confidence, because as much as we all love the donuts, the ice creams and things like that, I think most people can probably admit that you have them, but then afterwards you're kind of like, was it really the best decision? Whereas, if you can have that fine balance, you're probably always going to be walking around feeling that confidence of like, what I'm putting in is helping me, achieve my best self. And, that's one way I think that worked really well for me when I did my
Mhm.
change of diet and things. Like for full transparency, when I did mine, I kind of went cold turkey, dropped sugar, and I wanted to prove that I could lose the weight. And, that worked really well for me because it took me away all those bad habits. And it also forced me to then have to try different things that I wouldn't have normally tried. And so when I dropped all sugar, I meant like processed sugar. So I kept all fruits and things like that. And then as I built off, I ended up losing about 22 kilos. This is about 7 years ago. And then I was able to then, at the time, I was then starting to run and I could start to rebuild what that looked like, in terms of what foods I would be eating, what I enjoyed eating, the ones that I knew now, which made me feel sick because they were too sugary and because my body got, they weren't used to them anymore. It meant I could then rebuild what my body was comfortable with. And now I can comfortably have those, those goodies or those spoils every so often, because also I have I'm complementing it with that exercise and that routine, and I'm training for things. So it all helps bring together that balance. But I do also know those times where where you do have too much, you think, no, I shouldn't have had this. It was a bad decision to have that extra one of those. And but I think, at the same time, you said it yourself, you're not here to say that, no, you can't be doing this, you can't be doing that, but it is finding that key balance. I love this. I mean, I think we could talk about it for a very, very long
Yeah.
time. And I'm just anxious of our time. So I wanted to, just quickly jump off that and actually do some rapid fire questions, and for the audience to get to know you a little bit more. And these are
Oh,
complete.
first, can I just
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
everything you just said was like A1.
Uh,
That was the perfect way to kind of
Thank
sum
you.
that up. I think confidence and everything you just said, I second that. So yeah.
There you go, people. There we go. Now I appreciate that. And I think, you know, when you go through it, like actually losing weight yourself, it gives you a different perception, right? Or it gives you a different understanding because you've gone through that process. But if you're at the other side of it, at the start of it, it's scary. It's overwhelming. You feel like it's going to be a lot of hard work. And I'm not saying it's easy, but I think it can be easier if you've got the right information or the right support, or the right things to land on and understand, well, what is this actually doing for me, versus no, you just have to cut out this, right? Because it changes
Right.
the conversation. And that's why having this conversation with you, and I am going to encourage everyone to make sure they go, check out what you're doing, and we'll talk about your socials later. But that's why having someone like yourself is so important. Or as you said, finding other people that are creating these nutrition recipes or are dietitians and sharing their journeys on socials, because you're getting that better understanding from someone that's probably has a bit more of that authority or trust behind it. And it's not just not saying that there's plenty of people, not saying that there's people out there that aren't actually sharing the right thing. They just might not have, there might just not be a dietitian, right? Whatnot. But if people are worried about, are they doing the right thing, falling into the realms of someone like a dietitian is probably going to help give you that confidence to actually then make a change. I think that's even more important as well.
Agreed.
Awesome. So let's jump into some rapid fire questions. And this is just, for a bit of fun for people to know a little bit more about yourself. But if you find if there's other things there that you want to dive into or add some value points to, then by all means, otherwise you can keep it sharp and short. The first one being, what is your favorite book or audio book or podcast that you have consumed or read?
I would say anything by Joyce Meyer. She's my favorite author. She has podcasts and stuff that are great. I listen to every morning. And also I've been wanting to read Atomic Habits by James Clear. I've heard good things.
So good.
You read it?
Yes. Yeah. It's
good.
It actually plays really, really well with what we've been talking about today in terms of, small things over a long period of time, and, whether it's that 1% better, and because that compounds, right? And I think that's why for me, being on the other end of it, I can now see, well, yes, cold turkey worked really well for me, but that's why I said, if we're going to be eating for the next 30, 40, 50, 60 years of your life, and you're doing something small and just looking for that small improvement, that 1%, you don't have to go cold turkey. It's about, slightly making that change, because you're going to be eating anyway. So you may as just do this, the small adjustments. It's kind of like, with anything else that we want to grow and change, you can try and say, I'm going to earn $100,000 tomorrow. Well, that's probably not going to happen. But, to do it over 2 years, it probably makes more sense, because you have to build the momentum, build the confidence, build the understanding and knowledge. So Atomic Habits, get on that one. It's well worth it.
Okay, will do.
The next one for you, and it's actually food related, is if you could only have, and this is probably bad for the whole conversation we've just had, but if you could only have 3 foods or meals for the rest of your life, what would they be?
Well, I think that actually speaks well to what we've been talking about, because, I want to choose something that's going to make me feel good if it's the rest of my life.
That's true.
So I'm going to go with 3 things that can be found on my Instagram feed as well. Just a little plug there. Baked oatmeal has been a go-to lately. So good. And then, you can make any flavor of that, right? So that's included in the 3. So baked oatmeal, and then I really have been loving pesto pasta with shrimp. So pesto pasta would be one. And then another favorite of mine, I live in the South in the US, so barbecue is big here. So like barbecue chicken, stuffed baked potatoes. It's like,
that's good.
So
you're making me hungry. No, that's 3 good options. I love it. And you've kind of got a good range of morning, lunch, and dinner in there that you can mix and match.
Sweet, savory.
You've got everything. Wow, well played. Good answer. Did you think about this beforehand?
I did.
That's good. But no, it's a really good answer, right? And I think just that, it helps you understand that you've got such good variety in it, and it really does back up everything you've just said. So I do appreciate that answer. The next one is, you win $10,000 today with no strings attached. What are you doing with it?
I think kind of speaks to what my personality is. I would probably put a lot of it in savings. And that's kind of boring, but that's okay.
Each to their own.
You never know when you're going to need it.
That's
and then one of my favorite charities I would probably give to. I'm sure a lot of people give that answer, but the Jesus Film is my favorite charity, so I'd probably give some to them and put the rest in savings. So
no, I love it. Thank you for answering. and there's no right or wrong answer to it, right? And that's why I love asking these different questions, is because it helps, just helps, put some perspective around the type of person and what they're into and things like that, which
Yeah.
actually leads to the next one, which is kind of, what do you like to do in your spare time? Like, hobbies or side passions?
Yeah, a lot of my spare time I do spend on, creating recipes and content for my social media. And that's been a big passion and a great creative outlet. So a lot of my spare time I do spend with my little camera,
Yeah.
or actually my iPhone, taking little videos. But I love to spend time outside. Joined a gym here recently
Okay.
in Georgia in my new town, and with my family.
Yeah. No, I
So.
love it. That's good. That's good. And another food one is, what is your favorite snack?
Okay, this is an easy one, because I'm probably gonna have some after this. I've been making, for like kind of a dessert type snack, like dates stuffed with some crunchy almond butter
Ooh.
and then either chocolate chips or cacao nibs on top.
Wow. Wow.
Super
That's
good.
a very sophisticated date, but
It's sophisticated but also simple.
yeah.
Three ingredients.
And
So
actually, I feel like that's been trending of late, because I saw it come up in like some article around, yeah, that stuffed dates is a
I
new
think it
thing.
is.
Yeah, that's because,
Yeah, I don't know where I
yeah,
saw it, but
because to be
it's
honest,
great.
I've never thought about, yeah, stuffing dates, like, because usually you're putting dates
Yeah,
in something and not something in dates, right?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you
It's
for
good.
sharing that.
You're
And the
welcome.
last one is a bit more deeper. Is, what would you tell your teenage self?
Oh yeah, that's a tough one. I'm 26, so think about me like 10 years ago. I think it would have been great to know a lot more about nutrition. I mean, I didn't know a lot at all. So I think when you first said that, what first came to my mind was don't care so much about what other people think.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important at all ages. But as far as nutrition, I wish I would have known to eat more protein throughout the day, because I think a lot of people just eat meat at dinner or
Yeah.
whatever,
That's true.
and maybe some oatmeal at breakfast is nothing, really with the protein, and then at lunch maybe a peanut butter sandwich. I
Yeah.
wish I would have eaten more protein throughout the day. So
Okay.
that's what I thought of.
No, and I love it because it's, hindsight, right? You're able to look back and play. But then, just to kind of follow on that, so because of that, do you eat more protein now through the day?
It's still hard. So
Yeah.
like I could
Okay.
still tell myself that now. But I think it helps a lot with maintaining your fullness and
Yeah.
also like muscle building, getting more opportunities to have that muscle protein synthesis
Yep.
throughout the day.
Yeah.
So I'm still working on that, I would say.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a
Yeah,
great answer.
yeah.
I love it. Well, I mean, it's been an absolute wonderful conversation, and we've discussed so much. And I was going to say that, to wrap it up, but I think we kind of, we've touched on so many different points around. I think the key one for me has been around going through all this process, and it's about, getting your understanding right and getting that. And I think that probably comes from maybe having to have a conversation with someone or going to the right places, but coming back to that why, and then leading it into finding that confidence of, owning and living the life you want, knowing you're comfortably eating the right food that you're confident with, right? Because, I feel like there's so much, we touch on about, there's so much where we're looking at other people and seeing what they're eating or consuming or how their body figure is, and then we're, making ourselves feel so hard on ourselves because we think, oh well, how come they can eat that but I eat that, and then, I'm still getting fat, or, I'm not getting the same results. And, we make it so hard for ourselves when really maybe we just need to have a conversation, or we need to just understand a bit better of how that works for our body. And the big kicker for me was, when you do have that spike in the morning, but then finding the ones to make it level out, to ride the day. I
Mhm.
think that opens up so much more opportunity, even for myself, right? Because it really does come back down to, well, what do we actually understand about all this? And then applying it to our why and what we want to actually make a difference in. It then actually seems so simple. So thank you for having the conversation.
Welcome.
Two things I want to get from you is where can everyone go find you, in terms of socials and things like that, if they want to follow along or to get to know you a bit more?
Yeah, I'm everywhere at Fuel with Rae. So FUEL with RAE. Instagram is probably the biggest one. And then
Yep.
TikTok, a lot of videos over there. And then YouTube, I post them all as shorts too.
Yep.
So And then the blog is brand new. We've got one recipe over there. It's the stuffed dates. It's fuelwithrae.com.
Awesome.
I think that's everywhere that I am. But yeah, if you guys do come, send me a message and say, you're from the podcast. I would love to chat. And if you're the kind of person who has a question that you wish you could ask someone, you can ask me. I'll be not your dietitian, but I'll be your friend who has some knowledge that I can help you out. So yeah.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And the final thing is if you could leave, the audience with one thing to take away from this episode, what would that be?
Oh, I would say that, taking steps in your life, whether it be diet, sleep, lifestyle, exercise, to help yourself feel confident and feel, I guess, good about yourself, is a good thing. I think that, diet and the same with running, when you are able to achieve something that you set out to do, that makes you feel like you can do anything. And then whatever your day job is, you'll feel like you're able to go into that with a lot more confidence, when you're able to conquer these little things that all of us have to deal with in life, like food. So yeah. And I also think that, being able to talk about whatever topic, like y'all do here on the podcast, is a great takeaway as well, because we can learn a lot from other people, that know different things than we do. Yeah,
that's right. And being open to that is, something that I've had to learn as well, because, we think we know everything, right? But you don't know what you don't know. So therefore, finding that gap, the only way to find it is to be, stepping outside of that comfort circle or that bubble or that square or box that you're in, and being open to hearing, not saying that you have to accept everything you hear, but helping, being open to hearing those different conversations, whether it's around food, whether it's around money, whether it's around, self-growth, or, any element in life, because otherwise you will be stuck in that same box, and, it'll be 10 years later and nothing's probably changed. Not to be all gloomy, but that's the reality of it. So I love how you said that, and it really does come down to sometimes those small things over a long period of time, those small wins is going to help you have that big fulfillment and that longer term happiness and success. So I love how we've gone from, just talking about the diets and food, and now we're getting into the real life stuff. So, but they all have a part to play, right? And that's really what I'm trying to achieve here with Further Your Lifestyle. So thank you so much, Rae. I really do appreciate you having the conversation and hanging out. And yes, people, please go over to Rae's socials, go check out and see what she's doing. Of course, her little recipes and all her little foods over there is just, they're really catching. And whether you're there to find healthy recipes or not, they're just mesmerizing to watch, I find. But go see what she's doing. And if you do have a question, go reach out and have the conversation with Rae, because as she said, she's more than happy to have that conversation. Otherwise, Rae, thank you so much. And yeah, you have a wonderful day.
Yeah, you too. Have a great day on Tuesday over there. And thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
No worries. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Cheers.
So there you go, another episode, and I'm really, really grateful and thankful to have Rae here on the episode and to have the conversation. And if you have any questions, or maybe you're not sure where to start, or maybe there were some areas in this podcast which resonated with you, then feel free to reach out to Rae. You can jump over to her socials. Otherwise, maybe you still want to have a conversation and you're not too sure. More than happy for you to reach out to myself, even though I'm not the expert here. And, Rae really does want to help you and encourage you to make the changes best for your lifestyle and to help you feel better for your life, or whatever your life demands. So go check out her recipes, go check out her TikToks and shorts and reels over on her socials, but also go have a conversation with her, ask her a question, see what she's all about, because hopefully it might be just a small thing that you can make a change in, and that will have a big impact over a long period of time. So really do appreciate you listening. Like I said, if you do have any questions, let's continue the conversation, and you have a wonderful day. Cheers. Now, if you didn't know, we do have the podcast merch, and this is with a key focus of enamel pins. Now, if you haven't checked these out, make sure you do, because the intent of these are really just to be a small token and a reminder for you to charge on, to push on, and to further your lifestyle. Whether it is a gift for someone else to encourage them, or maybe to inspire them, or maybe it's a way to motivate yourself, or you can simply just make a purchase to simply support the podcast, which would be greatly appreciated. We do also have some sweaters and some long tees, so make sure you check it out. Link in the description and in the show notes. Really do appreciate it. Cheers.